So just to start out, my name is Mike Marcevic. I also have Danielle Gerber on the event with me. We're going to talk about some things that we've learned over the last 6 months with COVID and being virtual, and how we've delivered training and some tips and tricks, lessons learned from the field, and how we've adapted during this time to delivering, in the last 6 months. So we'll move forward. Let me just spend just a minute talking about, my background, a little bit about my background. I've been doing transformation now for probably the last 10, 12 years. Started out as a developer, just like probably everybody else in IT at some point in their career. Spent a little time in development, spent a little time being a project manager, realized that wasn't my cup of tea, and just started to look for new ways to work at the team level, and discovered Agile. It feels like forever ago now, but and then out of learning about Agile, I tried to figure out how we could scale it for the organization that I was at, and just stumbled upon Scaled Agile, and really with that framework started to fall in love with some of the things that it could do at scale, and some of the cadence and the centralization of understanding key responsibilities. Out of that, I went on and got my CSP, Certified Scrum Professional certification. So did the role of the CSM, the CSPO, and then kind of tied it off with the CSP. Also, because I'm a learner by nature, I went and picked up my PMI ACP, and it's all really, for me, it's just about the learning and continuing to grow, and that's really why we're here today. This is probably things that you've been through or you've experienced, but we just wanted to share. We wanted to share what we've gone through in the last 6 months, and maybe you can take away something, or maybe we can, you can share something as well. Fun fact about me: I live in Colorado, and Colorado is not the tornado capital of the world, but I was fortunate enough to actually survive being in one while riding an ATV. So those are two things that you probably don't hear together that often, but especially up in the mountains at 10,000 feet. So interesting fact about me. And then I'll hand it over to Danielle and let her do a quick introduction, and then we'll get into the event itself.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm Danielle Gerber. I too am an SPC, or a SAFE program consultant. So Mike and I both do a lot of SAFE training at different client environments, as well as internally in our organization at TEKsystems. And I've got about 14 years experience, kind of a similar background as Mike. I was a developer back in the early 90s, really got into, working in both business and technology for many years in traditional waterfall approaches. And I started to really understand and learn what Agile was kind of in the early to mid, 2000s. And so I started to understand that I also had a desire to learn more about scaling. And it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago that I really started to understand Scaled Agile framework, and then got interested and looked into what it took for me to get the experience and do the necessary research and training in order to get my SPC. And so I'm excited to be here today and share as well. Mike and I do a lot of paired training together, and so we've learned quite a bit about remote training and a lot of the tools that SAFE provides, as well as some things that they don't necessarily tell you that we've picked up on and we've tried to utilize in our retrospectives to make our training engagements much better. My fun fact is my oldest son plays professional baseball. He is a AA and AAA baseball player in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. So that's my fun fact. And we're really hoping that you guys enjoy this presentation today. And please feel free. We will be taking a look at the Q&A, and we will give everybody an opportunity to be able to address a lot of those questions. So sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the next hour. And we look forward to hearing from you all at the end.
Why are we here, right? The couple things that we want to cover, and the way that we're going to kind of go through this, I'm going to tackle the first three, and then Danielle is going to pick up the second three, and we'll hopefully allow 15 minutes at the end for us to really, answer any questions you might have. So as we talk about, what we've learned or experiences that we've had, there's a couple things that we want to talk about, different approaches that we've taken, whether, we're talking about doing big group activities or breaking groups out into smaller groups. And hopefully, that's working well. And some of the things that we've experienced and the benefits of doing that and when and why to do that, talking about managing your time, especially now that we're virtual, what that looks like, especially as we're delivering the large amount of content and knowledge that's within the Scaled Agile framework. And then how do you organize that, based off of where you are and what tools and technologies you might be using. And then we'll dive into a little bit of the logistics side, the course-ware that Scaled Agile provides, and then how we've tried to make it fun for the folks that, we've been training over the last 6 months. And one of the things that, Danielle alluded to earlier, and I just wanted to touch on again, is over the last 6 months, I think we were, over a half dozen courses that we've delivered. And, we've always been trying to improve. We've always asked for feedback out of every session, sometimes after each day of a session, just because it is so new to a lot of folks that have never done it before. It's an experience for them, and we want to get the most out of it. That face-to-face, classroom environment is something that's changing, especially over the last 6 months. We're seeing more and more virtual training, virtual coaching occurring. So, trying to take advantage of what's happening currently in the marketplace and how we can be better at our trade, at our skill of delivering content and enabling transformation. So let's dive into the first section and really talking about what does it look like when we have folks together in a room, and the differences between large room conversations and breaking out folks into smaller rooms and understanding the value behind each of them. So if I think about what I've done, especially when we're talking big group, right? The big group is really the opportunity for us to level set expectation and for us to be able as trainers and facilitators to drive the conversation, right? Trying to make sure that you look ahead to the material that's available, especially in the delivery guides that are provided by Scaled Agile. You'll see the size of the breakout session and the amount of activities and the learning that's required out of it. And really for me, when I decide if I want to keep people together or break them out, it's what type of learning experience do I want them to have, right? Is it that I want them to just receive information, or do I want them to collaborate and have a certain outcome out of the event? Making sure that when we, either way, whether we're together or we're in separate rooms, making sure that they understand the expected outcome, and then being able to, ensure that we have the right level of participation. If it's a one-directional conversation while we're trying to get people to understand an activity, like, for example, value stream mapping, that's one of those breakout sessions and exercises that a lot of people struggle with. And so it may be better in that activity to do kind of a hybrid approach where everyone together walks through the exercise and the example, and then you give them an opportunity to go out into separate rooms. And then, as they go out into separate rooms, we want to give them something that they can, come back and teach back. So give them that, here's what we expect to do out of this session. We're going to do a teach back. And then that way it ensures that you do have that constant participation. You've got everyone, engaged and collaborating. And it gives an opportunity for everyone to speak up. If it's in a big room, let's say, for example, one of our courses that we offered, I think we had 35 students. That's hard to have a conversation, especially a value-added conversation with that many participants in one big room. But as you're able to break them out into smaller rooms, you'll see that, there's that kind of that whole-on thinking, that smaller system thinking where there's going to be more engaging conversations happening in the smaller groups. It's more of an informal experience so that people are more willing to share some of their learnings. And there's not that pressure when they're in the smaller groups. And again, if you can look ahead to what the outcomes are for each of the activities, you can determine what the appropriate size is going to be for some of the breakout sessions. Some of them, Scaled Agile, asks for two, groups of 2 or more. Some of them are 5, depending on the type of session. I know, especially when we're talking about, executing the PI or planning the PI in Leading Safe, that's an activity where you want a multiple number of people, so you can have a Scrum Master role, a Product Owner role, and multiple developers. So, obviously for me, it's look ahead, understand the exercises that are coming, and then determine what type of value you want to get out of the exercise and what the appropriate way is. There isn't one right answer, I think, for the breakout sessions. For me, it's making sure that you understand it coming into it, and then you experiment. You run the experiment, you get the feedback, and you determine, was this a value add? And ask the participants as well as they're going through this, did it work for them, right? What were the outcomes? What were the learnings that they had, especially in the smaller breakout sessions? I think it's key because we are asking for a lot more collaboration in the smaller breakout rooms. Have them share their learnings. I think that's really important, especially, as we're talking about spending 3 or 4 days together. We're going to want to get to know each other. And then that's really, for me, that was one of the key lessons learned that I took away out of the last, offering that we had was folks were just getting to know each other. We didn't have the traditional coffee breaks that we would have if we were all face to face, where we go out in the, the lounge area and have some dessert or treats or whatever. We would take our 15-minute break at home and everybody would log off the, the monitor and mute the microphone and check their email. We never spent time, getting to know the people that are in the class with us and a lot of their background. So think about that, especially the more breakouts that we can have. It's more opportunity for folks to learn about, about each other and maybe make that experience better for everyone. As we, move forward and we talk about talking about managing your time. So this to me is my Achilles heel. For folks that know me, when I get passionate about subjects, I do 2 things. 1, I talk really fast. 2, I don't stop talking. It's like a never-ending session for me. So I have to be very mindful. And there's a lot of things that, Elmo being one of them. I had a friend that shared the Elmo story with me, and that's something that I always use. And if you're not familiar with it, it's enough. Let's move on. Now, obviously, in this type of learning setting, we don't have as many Elmos, but it is something that, keep in mind. For me, I think the most important takeaways for me was having that syllabus almost set up for myself. One of the things that Danielle did a great job, especially as we started pairing together, she would help outline what the structure looked like. And then a little bit of my OCD took over, and then I took it even a step further. I started looking at the total number of slides in the lesson, especially, lesson 4 of Leading Safe. There's 94 slides in there. There's 145 minutes of activities. There's 2 or 3 videos that are in there. And then there's a simulation prep, that you've got to account for all of those slides on top of, I think it's 68 slides of just content that you have to go over. And Scaled Agile believes that we can deliver that in 4 hours and 10 minutes. And I have tried my best, and I cannot do it in any less than like 5 hours and 30 minutes. So I understand, the way that things are broken out, but knowing that and reviewing that material and kind of time boxing yourself to understand how much content is in there is key. Don't just you can use the guide that's there, but it's important to look at the material, the activities, the videos that are there to make sure that you've got a good timeline and level setting the expectation of how long it's going to take for yourself, so that everyone that's participating, gets the full experience. Especially, since we're virtual, for me, it was making sure we had time, especially time getting in and out of the breakout sessions. For folks, a lot of times this is their first time using a tool like WebEx or Teams or what's the last one? Teams, WebEx. What's the one?
Zoom.
Zoom. Thank you. Wow, it was right there on the tip of my tongue. Right. For folks, sometimes it's their first time experiencing and using those tools. So, thinking about giving them a little extra time. We noticed, especially for some of the larger activities, we'd give them a 2-minute warning, and that was valuable in kind of controlling the time box, and then doing a 60-second warning, and then having everybody come out at the same time. It's important, especially when you go in and you've got these breakout sessions that are occurring, to make sure that you identify a scribe early on, and then set what the expected outcomes are ahead of sending folks out, especially in some of these time-boxed events. With the 145 minutes of activities that you see in Leading Safe in that section 4, people are going to struggle, especially if they don't know each other, going into those first couple of breakout sessions and activities. And a lot of times they're just trying to figure out who's going to be the one that's taking the notes. So set that expectation before you send them into the breakouts, and you'll see that their time will be used just as, will take advantage of their time or have their time be more valuable for them in those breakout sessions. Making sure, obviously keep in mind one of the things that we just actually took away from the last one, the last training session that we did. We had a 4-day release train engineer training session that went on. And one of the things that we figured out, especially over that many days, is we've got to just give more breaks, right? The idea of going 2 hours nonstop, it just doesn't work. So understanding to have the appropriate amount of breaks, we retrospected and we realized maybe it's, a 10-minute break every 50 minutes just to give folks a chance to get out of their seats, to move around, and holding those to the time boxes. So a lot of folks are familiar with a timer. I use that all the time. It's actually running in my background right now, so I can make sure that I'm respecting the time box for this event. So kind of keep that in mind, making sure that you have all the breakout sessions timed. You're accounting for all of the breakouts within the content or the delivery time frame for the section, and then making sure to get feedback as we're going through it, because there is so much material that's being provided. Getting that feedback, I think, is critical to know, do I need to speed up? Do I need to slow down? Giving folks enough time to ask questions. And again, you can only do that if you have a clear understanding of all of the content that is available or that's going to be, provided during that session or that lesson. So I'm going to move to the next slide. For me, this is around, and this looks like my desktop. The screen on the right is probably what my desktop normally looks like. This is what it feels like, especially a lot of times when you've got so much material that you're trying to go through. And one of the things that we learned early on is, have a centralized location for all of your material, especially if you're working with vendors that have, locked down restrictions on their internet, making sure that you give them a location like a Google Drive where we can get activities out there that they can access. If you're using WebEx, you make sure you load up the content on the WebEx tool or the Zoom tool. When we're talking about Google Drive, make sure that you've got your group activities set up based on the size of the people that are attending your session. Make sure you have the right size session set up, those breakout sessions, and then make sure to have an appropriate number of templates available. That just makes it easier for the participants. You can even go as far as naming them group A through F or A through Z, whatever's, depending again on the class size, what would be needed. And then making sure that you have the PowerPoints available on the Google Drive as a backup in case you or your partner that you're working with in delivering the paired training loses access. I know for me, I've had internet issues over the last 6 months with the masses now going to virtual training, not just here, but for the children at home as well. So keep in mind bandwidth restrictions could potentially cause some issues. So we need to be able to think about how do we back that up? Where do we have our backups? Do we put them on a Google Drive? Do we put them on a SharePoint site? Do we upload them onto the tool itself, depending on which tool we're using? We think about that. We make sure we have our retrospect items out there, especially if we're virtual. One of the key things that we found is people like that real-time, interaction. If they can't get it, or if we've gone past a section and they have, a question, they sometimes just won't ask it. So we gave them the opportunity to actually do a retrospective or a parking lot on a shared device. So Google Drive, we downloaded a PowerPoint presentation, and folks were actually able to put their comments in there, in addition to on the tool itself, but they could also open up the PowerPoint and load up any questions that they had for down the road. Or if there's any comments that they had, we could get real-time feedback on how the class was going. Those things are important, especially, as we're virtual. The WebEx, Zoom, and Teams, utilize the upload feature as much as you can. This presentation that we're going through, Danielle actually uploaded it, and her and I can both control, the screens in and out, especially if I lose connectivity. We had that in the last training. My co-trainer literally picked it up right where I left off, and I did the same for him. So for the user experience, it seems seamless. When you're having to fumble and share screens and do all of that, it takes away from the learning, and then they're just focused on the technology. And especially as trainers, that's the one thing we want, is really to have them have that deep, immersive experience in the training and the content, because there is so much that we have to go through in a limited amount of time. Keep in mind, especially as we're virtual, and you guys start to see the people that are signing up for the classes, start thinking about the breakout rooms and the number of breakout rooms you want to have. Making sure that you have the total number of breakout rooms available. You've got all of the right group activity templates to match that. So as they're going into their breakout rooms, you can walk them through and say, hey, we're using Google Drive. Here's where you go. Here's group A. Here's group B. This is how we're going to do it in PowerPoint. Here's where you're going to be on your digital copy. And especially the last thing I would say, especially if we're virtual, you want to make sure you download all of your videos. Like, that was the number one lesson learned for me, especially delivering content. Man, trying to stream a YouTube video through any of these applications, it's almost like picking up a dial-up modem and trying to share it. It is the most painful thing to watch on the planet. So making sure you can upload those videos, especially on WebEx, it has a file share capability where you can load it onto the tool itself. I know other technologies have the same type of capability, but having that file share, it makes it definitely a lot more seamless, and you don't have as much of that buffering occurring. So try to download as much as you can. Vimeo is a great source. Danielle shared that with me, so I don't have to struggle hunting for it anymore. I think everything that you need for Scaled Agile is out there and available. So that's really the first three sections that I wanted to cover. I'm going to hand it over to Danielle and let her go into the next three sections, and then we'll answer any questions you have at the end during the Q&A. Thank you guys for your time.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Yeah, so a lot of what Mike says really kind of drives some of the logistics, right, behind how we want to set things up so that we're prepared going into it. We have some contingencies, like Mike said. And for anyone on the call today who might be interested in getting these materials, because I know, especially with this page in particular, not as many graphics or images, but a lot of specific detail here on really getting yourself prepared. Feel free to reach out to us in the Q&A, ask us, and we can send you, we can provide you with a PDF of today's material. But just to go through some of these, really understanding how to prepare and how to have some of those backups in place and how to effectively communicate are really key. Because what we would find is, like Mike mentioned, we'd get on a training session, we'd get started, we get going, and there would be several people out there who weren't familiar with the tools that we were using, whether it was a Google Drive, whether it was the Zoom or the WebEx or whatever it might have been. And so just learning that we should be doing some type of little, mini training session at the beginning helps. It also helps to have someone else there to help the SPCs, someone that's that technology guru that can be watching the chat, that can be administering the tools, so that as people have issues with access or questions on how to use it, they're there to help out, right? So it doesn't disrupt the class. It's really helpful as well, like Mike said, to download the videos. It's also good to be able to send the link. Have the link ready on the side, just in case a download sometimes doesn't work. I know that, Scaled Agile likes to put sometimes brand new videos out there. That if you go into your SPCT or your SPC portal and you're pulling down some of those videos that only you have permission to use as an SPC, you can't really use the link. You can't send them the link. Or maybe they're on Vimeo, but they aren't downloadable. Or maybe they're only available on YouTube. So it's good to have the backup of the link if possible. And they are in some of the toolkits for the courseware. So when you open a lot of the new courseware that is remote, most of them do come with a central activity kind of PowerPoint deck that's central for the SPCs to use. And within it, it usually does include a slide that has the links to all the videos. So it's good to have that handy in case you need to send it out in the chat. It's also good to be able to do, to tie the AV tool with the breakout functionality. If you can use a tool that allows everyone to be able to have the audio and the video in both the central room as well as their breakout rooms, that's ideal. Mike and I learned that Zoom definitely gives you that ability. You don't have to keep changing that video or the audio when you go from a breakout room into the central room. Teams, Microsoft Teams, we just heard last week, is just about to launch into production their individual breakout rooms for training. So we're super excited to try that tool out. And then WebEx was a little less accommodating in terms of the video and the audio always being there when you went into a breakout room. In the beginning of this COVID situation and doing a lot of remote training, the video was there when you went into a breakout room. But we understand that some of these manufacturers of some of these applications have started to redo some of the functionality to support some of the bandwidth issues that they've been seeing. And we think that the videos in the breakout rooms for WebEx may have been one of those features that may have just been eliminated or reduced for the time being. But it has been a struggle. So we've gotten some feedback from some of the participants that that's very frustrating, that they don't get video and they have to turn the video back on when they come back into the central room. Mike mentioned things like Google Drive and having that accessible shared repository. It's especially helpful if it is public, right? Especially if you're working with a client. Now, some of your clients may not have that accessibility due to security restrictions. They may want you to be locked down to something within their own network. But a lot of times being able to have it out there and ready in a shared environment that's public allows you to be able to get it prepped and ready when you might have some limitations in your client's environment. But it especially is good when you are doing a public class, because we all know that you have the option of doing internal private classes or doing public classes that are open to really anyone. And that shared repository that's open to everyone, like a Google Docs, is very important. And so you want to make sure that everyone has access to it and tests it out in the beginning of the class. You know, Mike and I, when we first started doing this, when COVID first happened, we both were just relying on our laptop cameras and the laptop microphones. And we really started to learn that, you know, the quality of those videos and audio, it just wasn't there, right? We would do classes and we would have a lot of folks that would ask us to speak up. So we started switching to a lavalier mic, right, to pin it to our lapel. Or we were using a boom mic. So we started to slowly kind of get a little bit better with our technology. As you can see now, we're both using higher definition cameras. And so the video is crisper, it's better. And so that's definitely a better experience for your learners. You want to make sure that you do have great bandwidth. So not only just in terms of the download, but also the upload, because you're sending your audio and your video. That is very critical. And so those upload speeds are important as well as the download speeds. Because you not only want to be able to see what the instructors are presenting, but you want to make sure your audio and video are very clear and that you don't have any of that lag. So as an instructor, we both have learned as well. We actually both increased our own bandwidth at home because of the COVID situation and doing a lot of remote training. And so it's been very helpful. But as Mike mentioned, we still have backups in place. We were both still there to pick it up when the other one had an issue. And so that's extremely important. So we definitely recommend multiple SPCs to partner up to deliver remote training. Use a background. So you can see here, I actually have a printout of the big picture. This is the full configuration. I actually printed it as a gigantic poster for when I am training, so I can point to different sections of the framework. And that's helpful. It's really good when you're doing that in the middle of presenting. You can also use a virtual background. A lot of folks will use, we have some trainers that will use a virtual image of the big picture, or maybe it's something else that helps them with their training. Maybe it's the implementation roadmap, depending on the class that you're delivering. Maybe you use your own logo, right? So, you know, for example, with us, TEKsystems, our TEKsystems logo would have been great for this environment as well as being able to share some of our other safe backgrounds that we use. Mike already mentioned about the breaks. You know, that's very important. Build it into your schedule. Make sure you have a timer that you're using. That's important. Have it ready and waiting and sitting there. Have that schedule that you put together that he shared previously. Have it sitting there right next to you, easily available, so that you're not hunting and searching for those things while you're presenting. You want to be able to share that timer on the screen when you do go to breaks, right? So that you yourself need to take a break. That way, you're only sharing the timer on the screen. Turn your video off, turn your audio off, and take that break for yourself as well. There's going to be some times when you need to touch base with your partner and make sure that you're on the right pace, that you're addressing the right items that you had planned to do, that any coordinating for any of the activities are done during those breaks. But for the most part, take the breaks yourself as well. Because training, if you haven't done it yourself already, it is exhausting. So take that time for yourself too. Now we kind of start getting into some of the other pieces here around the materials themselves, which Mike touched on briefly as well, but there is a welcome email template that comes in that courseware toolkit. We found that we were not only taking the template that Scaled Agile was recommending, but we were expanding on it because of the things that we had learned in some of our other classes that we had delivered. So we were learning that we needed to really explain why we wanted folks to be ready to use video, right? We wanted them to get a great experience. So come video ready. Don't roll out of bed with your PJs on, not ready to put your video on, because you're probably not going to come across as very engaged with everyone that we want you to interact with in all of the breakouts. We also recommend that you practice the tools and technology before you come into the class. So we do provide a link to the tool that says, please go out here and download the tool and make sure that you have access to it, and go in there and practice it a little bit if you can. We also mention if there is a public repository, and Mike and I learned this one the hard way as well. The first time that we delivered a public training class and we were using Google Docs, we had created the location. We shared the link during the class without communicating beforehand in our welcome email. And when we got in, because we did it in the middle of the class, a lot of the participants had some restrictions in their working environments that were security restrictions. They were not permitted to use their Google accounts. So most of them would not log in, and so therefore they couldn't actively use the tools that were in there. So we started communicating beforehand that maybe using your own personal laptop, right? This isn't just a working experience for you to do this class and take this class for work as a requirement, but it's a learning opportunity. It's the only way that we're going to continuously learn, right? So take the time, even if it means using your own personal laptop, because you want to be dedicated and you want to have that time away from work anyways. So encourage people to use their personal laptops. Encourage them to use their own personal private accounts if they need to log into things like Google, unless they can work some other arrangements out beforehand. As Mike mentions, upload those files, right? It makes it easy to transfer the facilitation back and forth. It improves the video experience, or again, having that at least a backup URL for folks. You can also utilize the whiteboard and have the annotation example. So for example, in WebEx training, which we're in WebEx events right now, but in WebEx training, you can actually annotate on the slide itself. Circle things you want people to pay attention to. Draw arrows and call attention in the class to the things you want them to pay the most attention to. This really helps because we find in a lot of the classes that we deliver, people are asking us, tell us what's on the exam, right? So pointing out some of those things that we know are definitely going to be topics in the exam. There we go. Mike's doing it right now. It really helps a lot to be able to add that annotation. And then, of course, when the class is over, send a follow-up communication and do it on a regular cadence. Mike and I like to do it weekly. It reminds folks of that deadline that's coming for the 30 days post-class to be able to submit their final examination to get their certification. It reminds folks that, hey, we're here. If you have a question about the process, or you have a last-minute question on some topic, we're still here. We're supporting you. So not only does it give them that deadline and kind of help them watch the clock, but it lets them know they're not alone. And so it's really helpful. So these are a lot of the different logistics, and there's probably a ton more. But like Mike mentioned, we've been doing this since about April. When he mentioned about a half a dozen courses, he meant individual courses, not individual classes that we've delivered. Because we've delivered several, from leading safe to release train engineer, product owner, product manager, scrum master, safe for teams, etc. But we've done them multiple times, and we've definitely learned a lot in the process. So moving on, if we take a look at those courseware kits. So everyone, if you're an SPC, you generally know how to access it. We're really lucky on our side within TEKsystems. We actually have an administrator of our account with Scaled Agile. And so he becomes our main contact for purchasing licenses, for accessing updated courseware kits. But if you are doing that yourself, it's really important that you familiarize yourself and you stay current. Scaled Agile tends to update the kits on a pretty regular basis, and they don't always update all of them. So if you went out and you knew there wasn't an update on, say, Scrum Master, there may have actually been an update on Leading Safe. And so it's important to double check. So a couple of days before your actual class begins, go out and download the most current version. Make sure that you have the digital workbook that everyone in your class has, because they're going to ask you, where are we in the workbook? Have that available like you see here on the right. This is a picture of the Release Train Engineer workbook. Have it available and have a reference so that they know where to go. It tends to be a little bit confusing when you have a slide number on the slide, you have a PDF number in that little search number at the top on Adobe, and then at the bottom of the pages, there's also a page number because, of course, they don't include page numbers on the index and the glossaries, etc. So it kind of throws the numbers off. So with 3 different numbers on pretty much every page, familiarize yourself and make sure that you explain to the participants which page number you're going to refer to when you do give them that reference. I like to use the one at the top because they can search for a page number. And if they use it, then they can immediately type the page number reference that I give them as opposed to constantly scrolling. And so I do like to use that one. And then it takes everyone to the exact slide. They also have the ability for anyone who is new to the remote classes. They have the ability to be able to write comments and notes and edit the PDF. And so that's really great. In fact, they've begun building a lot of the activities that are in the training class. They've begun building them into the workbook, the digital workbook. So for anyone that's been used to delivering the remote training since the beginning, when all of this started, they were doing a lot of it in PowerPoint decks. They were creating activity templates for the users to help the instructors so that they could guide the participants to that PowerPoint deck, and they could utilize that for the interactive breakout sessions. Well, what they've done now as well, if it's not an interactive session, then they've actually built a lot of it into the digital workbook itself, creating checkboxes, creating boxes where you can add comments for certain activities and things like that, so that they can take it away with them and save that workbook when they're finished. A lot of times it helps them when they study, and so recommending that they do use their workbook is very helpful. Make sure that not only do you have a shared location for the participants' materials, but a separate shared location for the instructor materials if you're doing a paired class. It's really important, I know that between Mike and myself, for us to always be on the same page. We always kept our Kanban of the course. We kept it updated in our shared folder so that when one of us would pull it up, if we were on lesson 5, then the last person that did lesson 4 had already moved that story over on the Kanban board. And so we kept it updated and we held each other accountable. It made it really easy. It also made it really easy when we had some of our groups organized. There was actually a slide in the central deck for the groups, so that as our tech guru was assigning everyone into their breakouts in the tool, they could actually keep track of who the people were in the breakouts so that they could manually put them into those groups in every day after the first day. And then that way everyone had a chance to be able to at least get familiar with the team they were working with, and then that way, they weren't starting over and reintroducing themselves every single day. So it's really important to have that shared location. And so as you can see here on this slide, we do show you, if you're not familiar, you can go out to the course administration in your SPC portal, and you can pull down a lot of those courseware materials, but you always want to go and look for the most current version. A lot of the current materials, for example, Release Train Engineer, they have not had an update since 5.0. Some of the other courses are already on 5.0.1, and probably even some of them are on .2. All right. And then last but not least, let's make it fun. So one of the things that we find is, and Mike mentioned take lots of breaks. It's really important. I mean, my legs get tired. Your legs will probably get tired. Everybody gets exhausted. Even though you're sitting and this is remote training, it is really tiring. I would find that I would go to bed at like 7:30 or 8 every evening when we were doing training, even though we were sitting. There would be times when I would raise my desk and I would stand for certain activities, but it is extremely tiring. So make sure that you can keep people engaged or they'll lose interest. And then that's overall going to affect their exams. It's going to affect the results in the survey, their ability to learn as well. So make it fun. Give them some extracurricular activities. We had one training class where I would play either a Jane Fonda video or maybe a Richard Simmons video just to get you off your feet and do a couple of jumping jacks or just stretch. But it also got a good laugh too. So even if it was a time where everybody was pretty tired towards the end of the day, it gave them a little bit of a break. We also, Mike and I recently learned from one of our new peers. He uses the emojis in the tools quite a bit. And so he will, if he's asking for folks to vote without using the polling, he may ask everyone, hey, are we ready for a break? And if you are, show me the coffee emoji. How does everyone feel about us going ahead and moving forward? Have we had enough dialogue around this? Maybe we use the happy face emoji. There were a lot of times that we would put a limit in our working agreements on the number of questions that we would allow, per slide. But there would also be times where maybe we were making up time and we could afford a little bit extra time to make it fun and to throw in a couple of little extra activities or go a little bit long on a couple of slides where there were a lot of questions. And then last but not least, another item here that might make it fun is, give them a scavenger hunt that forces them to get out of their seats and go look for something in their house. And everybody's on video so they can put it on video and show you and they can share. And you can make it fun and exciting. And so that's just another little idea that Mike had to actually make it, a lot more interesting when people are tired after 3 days of sitting down for training. So we hope that all of these materials are really helpful and that, that everyone has the opportunity to be able to learn from some of what we've learned. And we're still learning. So absolutely, this is not the extent of everything that we have to learn in order to be more polished and better instructors because we want to continue to learn. So we'll go ahead and let's go ahead and open up the question and answer session. And so as you can see here on this slide, right underneath the attendees, and you probably don't see the other attendees, you probably only see yourself, but that's okay. If you would like to go ahead and add in a question down there, just open up that Q&A section if it's not already open for you. And you can type your questions directly in there. And then Mike and I will go ahead and answer those. All right, it looks like we've got one in there. So how do you track attendance of students? How do you make sure they're paying attention? This is a really good question. I can tell you from my perspective, and then Mike, feel free to jump in if we had anything else there, but actually, most of the tools that we use have the ability to give you a report at the end of the day or at the end of the series so that you can track who actually logged in. And WebEx training can actually track their attention. And so for anyone that is familiar with WebEx, there's this little exclamation mark that shows up next to every attendee's name that is not currently looking at the screen that we are sharing. And then you tend to know, are they over here looking at this monitor over here? Maybe they're doing work, or maybe they got up from the desk and they walked away and their screen timed out, and that's why the little attention marker would pop up. But it would allow us to be able to do that. And then that way, especially internally, when we were providing internal training, because we were making our own investment internally, it was important, and our leaders wanted to know, did everyone attend and were they engaged? Mike, did you want to take the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is, which class or exercise is the most fun to teach, and then what about the most difficult? For me, I think that the funnest one is in leading safe. Lesson 4 around the PI. I mean, it's for folks that aren't familiar with big room planning and the benefits that it can bring. This is their, for the most part, it's their first opportunity to jump into it. and it is trial by fire. Like they come out of it and they're like, wow, there's a lot that goes on. And we typically don't get through all of it. So to me, that's the funnest one to teach. I also have a little passion for LPM, that section, in within Leading Safe. And then probably the most challenging is value stream mapping. And I think it's a fresh scar for me. It's a new concept for a lot of folks, and the way that, Scaled Agile approaches it and using a lot of the content from the value stream mapping. It's one of those that you just have to take a little bit more time to make sure that everybody's bought in. I would say the second probably most challenging is WSGIF, right? Getting everybody to understand the cost of delay and how to do that and what that looks like. And again, we're teaching them new muscle memory. So it's being able to go through those experiences. And that's a great activity where you can demonstrate it first to the bigger group and then have them go out into their breakout sessions and experience it, and then do a teach back to make sure that they've actually caught that learning. All right, I'll let you pick up number 3, Danielle. We'll go back and forth, round robin.
Perfect. That sounds great. So the next question is, what would you recommend is a good classroom size? How many instructors, how many students work best? So Mike actually mentioned we had one class of 35 students. Now that was one that was pretty large. It's pretty easy to be able to accommodate 3 or 4 breakout sessions. And you can still have one coach kind of starting at the top of each of the rooms, another coach starting at the bottom and kind of working your way in. When you start to get a lot bigger than that, you really want to have maybe 1 or 2 more instructors. We actually delivered a Safe for Teams that had about 60 people in it about 3 months ago. That one was definitely challenging. What we found is we really limited it to 5 different breakout rooms, and really it's just a matter of what you can handle, and if you're adding in any buffers to any of the activities, because that is important as well, especially with the coaches having to bounce between rooms. It's really important to be able to add in that extra buffer so that you're not just getting in there by the time they're getting done because you were in a previous breakout room before that.
All right. So the next one, how do you ensure everyone is involved in the breakout and the team exercises? Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to do that. One is to actually, engage with the teach back. I mentioned it earlier. I think it's important to, 1, it gives them an opportunity to actually put hands on it, and then 2, to make sure, by the way they're presenting it back, that they did understand. The other way I do it is just by asking directly, what did you think about this exercise as we come back into the rooms, or while we're in the breakout rooms. Danielle mentioned having multiple SPCs or coaches available. It's a great opportunity when you're in those breakout rooms to also engage. Switching up the people that are scribing or presenting in the breakout rooms is another way to get other folks involved as well. And then the other part is making sure that they have to understand that this is their learning experience. They need to own it. They're accountable for following along and tracking in their digital workbooks. When we were all face to face, we'd all get that, 5-inch binder of all the material, and we'd be frantically writing as fast as we could as we were talking. We're in a much better learning environment now, having a digital workbook, a lot of us having multiple screens, try to avoid the distractions and really make sure that everyone understands. And we even talk about team working agreements for the training class. So I know Danielle and I probably didn't mention this, in the 45 minutes earlier, but we actually came up with some team working agreements. You heard her mention the 2 slides or 2 questions per slide. We even talked about like the breakout sessions. We talked about, muting when you're not asking a question. All of those things. Come up with a team working agreement that, everyone is responsible for their own learning experience. And everyone needs to be engaged. And we even asked folks if they needed to step away. We realize this, this isn't the most important thing you got going on in your life right now. If you need to step away, just let us know. We can catch you up or make sure that, if you're out when a breakout session occurs, that we don't have you assigned as the scribe for that breakout session. All right, the next one's yours, Danielle.
All right, thanks, Mike. So safe courses can be packed with content. Given all of the extra breaks and activities, have you felt the need to prioritize certain content over other content? So I'm going to say what Mike and I try to do is really stick with the course content because, of course, The licensing restrictions permit us to not alter the courseware. So we haven't altered any of the courseware, and we haven't really necessarily reprioritized anything. But what we have done is build a lot of buffers in. So Mike mentioned taking that trainer's guide and looking at their recommendation if you were in person, how much time they may recommend for each lesson. Well, what we've done is, and we learned this because we actually went to Scaled Agile to ask this question, but we asked them, is there a minimum or maximum number of days or duration that any one class can be offered for? And they said, no, it's up to you. So you can really build it so that it works best for your audience in terms of, do we only want 4-hour sessions and we want to give 5 4-hour sessions for a 2-day class? And you always definitely want to add that buffer. The virtual environment is going to cause a lot of delays by itself. Sending everyone to a breakout room, they take 30 to 60 seconds to get ready and get started. You pull them back, you have to wait for everyone to come back before you can present again. It adds a lot of lag there, and so you want to make sure that you can build in the extra time. And that's really how we were able to learn that, yes, in the beginning, there were times when we felt rushed. We knew we had to cover content, we hadn't built enough time in. But over the past several months, as we've delivered more classes, we've learned we can spread this out as much as we need to or as little as we need to, and we can build in as many buffers for all of those activities as we'd like. You're next, Mike.
And I'll add one thing onto that. I've just started doing this now, and I did it for the Release Train Engineer course that I delivered, but I actually went into the knowledge, the learning plan, and I looked at the percentages of each session. And, for each lesson, like, okay, there's 23% of the questions are going to come out of here, 32% are going to come out of here. And for me, that was like my little cheat sheet, because, again, the learning experience is on the individual that comes in. They're never going to be able to just take the course and go pass the test, right? They're not just going to be able to sit in. They've got to go through and they've got to have their own learning. So it would be, important for them to make sure they understand that it's not just what you get in this 3-day session or this 4-day session, but you've got to go back and do some more homework on top of it. So we're flying at, 1,000,000 miles an hour at 10,000 feet. You're not going to get all that detail that you need to pass the test. So keeping that in mind, I think is going to be important as well. The last question that we have right now is, what's the most challenging situation you faced while providing training, and how did you overcome it? I'll say for me, the most challenging that I've had is trying to get folks to understand something that I get just because I've done it over time, right? The experience that we all have as SPCs or as trainers, we forget to just, that sometimes things aren't as easy as we think they are. And a great example is value stream mapping. For me, like, I struggled through it, and I'll be honest, I struggled through it the first time I had to deliver it in a classroom setting or a virtual classroom setting. And what I did was I parking lotted it. I came back and I made sure at the end of the class, I presented another view of it. And then I asked my other coaches, right? Danielle, I think, was on the call. I had Randy Smith, our other SPCT, that was on the call, and asked them if they could provide some feedback. So you're not alone when you're dealing with these situations, and take advantage of the people that are around you. It may not be an SPC. It may be somebody that's in the class that could, help explain it better. Danielle, and I don't know if you've got any other situations that you'd want to share, but I've got plenty. So.
Yeah, I would definitely say when you're struggling in a group that may not be as responsive to the coaching or the engagement, sometimes it's a good idea to swap coaches, right? So hopefully you have at least 2 SPCs that are instructing. And if you're struggling in a room to really get them to understand how you're trying to help them, sometimes it's just a matter of bringing in a different perspective. And so going and asking another coach to step in or swap rooms, that's one that I've definitely found that can be interesting, where one room is maybe not really adjusting, or maybe it's a personality situation. So you do a little swap, and then all of a sudden things are so much better for that group, and maybe even the other one that you just switched into. So that's one thing that we've also seen as well, that having multiple coaches is really helpful. We also, in the RTE training that Mike mentioned recently, we had 3 of us that were doing that. And so we had one that stayed in the central room. We had one that went into each of the breakout rooms. and we always stayed in the same room. And then that way they were never left alone. There was always someone there to be able to answer questions. The RTE course, as most of you know, is probably one of the most difficult ones. And so really making that class a little bit smaller, we felt actually was very helpful. You know, Safe for Teams, doing it as a giant art, whether it's a quick start or whether it's you know, just doing Safe for Teams before they would go into their PI planning at some point. As Scaled Agile, you probably have heard Scaled Agile actually recommends doing it all together because of the learning experience and everyone hearing the same thing the exact same way and hearing each other's questions is very valuable. It's very helpful. So that's one example where a bigger classroom is okay and tends to work out pretty well. All right. Well, that was our last question. So I want to thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We will be posting this, so it will be available to the public. And if you are interested in receiving a PDF of any of the materials for today, please let us know. And it's been a pleasure meeting with everyone this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Gia. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.